Bonjour tout le monde, welcome back to We in France. I'm Diane, and it is a beautiful day outside, so I figured I'd take advantage and film out here in my backyard. So here we are. But let's jump into it. Today's topic is talking about this question: where are you from, and is it a problematic one? Now, for me personally, before moving to France, the only time I'd ever hear "where are you from" directed at me would be on vacation. Now, I was usually surrounded by people from out of the area, usually other Americans, and it was just lighthearted small talk that really didn't count for much. I didn't think much of it. But after moving to France, that same question comes up regularly, and it feels different. People notice my accent in French off the bat, and then that inevitable question follows. Now, it can certainly feel loaded, and I don't feel that it's always friendly or lighthearted. And on our worst days, maybe we bristle at the question a little bit and feel defensive because it's just another reminder that we're different and we don't automatically belong. So is the question too personal? Should people stop asking, where are you from? We're going to get into all that. But first, let me even explain why I'm making this video. I'm bringing this topic up, one, because I know many of you out there can relate. And two, I want to offer a different perspective, one maybe you haven't even considered, about a seemingly innocuous question that maybe you receive and think nothing of it, or that you've asked other people. I know that what I'm talking about here is a perspective that maybe you haven't considered because I had never considered it until I was on the receiving end of the question, where are you from, as a foreigner living in France? So I want to first start by discussing how this question even comes up. Usually, there's a little bit of an interaction, such as when a cashier, maybe a delivery person, someone in the park, a random stranger would overhear me speak. They might overhear you speak. They notice something different about you, how we sound, how we look. And it's a harmless curiosity thing. And the person is just looking to make a connection with a stranger. And in my case, as I said, my foreign accent here in French, it's what prompts the question. That's what gets someone to ask where I'm from, because they notice with the accent that I'm different. And many times here in France, when I answer that I'm from the US, it's a positive thing. It's nothing but a good thing. People have regaled me with their stories from their travels to New York City and LA, and they ask what it's like, and it brings up a way to connect. They relate. And it truly makes me happy to share that piece of where I'm from and to engage with people who genuinely want to know. And sometimes I even ask them to guess where I'm from, like it's a game, And I'm always tickled when they guess I'm from Belgium or Germany. And just this morning, someone asked if I was from Holland. And I think it's fun. Now, I can safely say that in most areas of the world, the vast majority of people are just trying to be friendly. They're curious. It's nothing malicious at all. And it can lead to really fun conversations. And I've had many. But, and yes, there's always a but, sometimes it could go way beyond that when the intentions feel different. Especially for people of color. That changes the game. When a simple question from a stranger escalates and turns into several questions now, after that, where are you from? Like, no. Where are you really from? Well, what about your parents and your grandparents? Now the tone changes and we're getting into that microaggression territory. And speaking from experience, an Asian friend of mine, born and raised in the US, she explained how insulting a question like this can feel. She'll reply by saying she's from California and how it's often not enough to satisfy people's curiosity and their probing questions that follow. She's even been complimented on her English, her native language, and I just have no words for that. But here on We in France, here on YouTube and my blog, I can only speak to my lived experience as a white woman living in France. But I feel like it's really important to understand others' experiences and definitely examine our own behavior and our privilege. Now, I know many of you can relate to this negative shift in tone and body language. It's the difference between genuinely wanting to make a connection and being nosy or even offensive. And that line can be really thin sometimes. And again, I'm going to say this a lot, so you really don't misinterpret what I'm saying. Even though most people are coming from a good place, and I believe they are, asking someone where they're from because you perceive them as different is othering. And it's a reminder to us that we're different in some way. And after you've gotten this question daily for weeks, it can really wear on you and mess with your head, especially if you're not really in a good headspace to begin with. You just moved to a new country and you're having trouble adjusting to life there. It can make you feel even worse. And I'm speaking from experience when I first moved to France. And I have to say, during my first few years here, my own feelings, my insecurities at the time, they definitely played into the impact that question had on me, even if the intent was from a good place, someone just wanting to know. For me, in the early years abroad, when we aren't sure of ourselves and our choices, not to mention not even having a handle on the language or being confident in our accent as a consequence, the where are you from question can really hit differently. And I hated that question. I hated it my first couple of years here. And I'm very careful now when using it myself. And if you get the question, I think it's normal to feel singled out or even upset because we're human and we have feelings. On particularly bad days, like hearing where are you from, it absolutely felt othering. And I would let my insecurities about my level of French and dealing with culture shock and everything else that comes with starting a new life abroad take over. It was isolating. It made me feel lonely. And like I said, on my worst days, I would just spiral down. You know, you can be really fragile when you have a lot to adjust to. And when you hear it all the time, you might even want to stop going out and interacting. You don't want to open your mouth in French because it's just a matter of time before someone reminds you once again that you're not like them. And sure, we should be stronger and we should keep our chin up. But you know what? It's not always simple to tell your mind to just snap right out of it. And anyone who's struggled with anxiety or depression, you know that. It's not that simple. Now, this brings me to impact versus intent. We have impact on one side, intent on the other, and we could have the best of intentions, but that will not prevent our words and actions from being received in a way that can be negative or even hurtful. And I want to bring up an article from the Harvard Business Review. I'm going to quote it. It sums up the issue here that I'm trying to describe absolutely perfectly. So let me quote, "For those of us who already feel different in a given space, being asked where we're from carries implicit assumptions about our race, caste, ethnicity, nationality, etc. Often it translates into, you don't seem to already belong here. It validates existing beliefs about social identities and can be quite patronizing. For instance, following up the question with, oh, of course, yes, you do look like you're from XYZ country, can force people into neat categories of race, gender, or nationality without acknowledging the nuances of that person's identity," end quote. And I'm going to give you an example of a situation. And again, as a white woman, I know that there's a lot of privilege here of what I'm talking about. And I know people don't have it the same way that I have it. But I'm just going to give you an example of this othering when it felt really antagonistic. Now, years ago, I was in the park with my dog, Dagny, who, as you know, she sadly passed away last year. But we'd run into people all the time. And this time it was an older man who happened to be with his grandson, who was 9 or 10 years old. The age is important here. I never met the boy before, but this wasn't a tiny, small child who wouldn't know any better, right? So I said hi to the man. We had a quick chit chat about our dogs. You know, that happens a lot. And the kid gives me this icy look, no warmth, no smile, no friendly curiosity. And he looks up at me and he smirks. Of course, this is all in French.
"You have an accent."
In a tone that was so wrong. There was no question there. There was no curiosity. It was a statement. And I want to point out that he used the familiar version of you, which is tu instead of vous. And he was old enough to know the difference. You do not speak to an adult when you're a kid that you don't know with tu. And I didn't miss a beat. I was proud of myself that I fired right back. Of course, this is all in French. Yes, I know. I'm American and English is my mother tongue. French is my second language. Do you speak any other languages? You know, just trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, engage him. You know, kids, maybe they don't know any better, right? Wait. So he ignores this question and he repeats the same statement with an even bolder tone, as if it's like some kind of character flaw that he's discovered about me, right? And I asked him, okay, so do you have a question for me? And he's like,
"No."
and at this point, the grandfather stepped in and I was like, whoa, hallelujah. You know, I was hoping it was going to be a teaching lesson kind of moment for him, but grandpa blew it. He was uncomfortable, as anyone would have been, right? And he said something like,
"Well, we have to get home for lunch now. Have a good day."
and that was that. He did not take the opportunity to educate his grandson, who, like I said, at like 9, 10, you're old enough to know better. Grandpa didn't explain to him how everyone is different, the beauty of other cultures, anything. You know, at least not in front of me. Maybe he picked it up later. Guessing he didn't. That interaction, it really bothered me. It bothered me at the time. It still annoys me now, to be honest. As you can see, I can remember it basically word for word, even years later. And yeah, he was a kid. I get it. Kids say dumb things. You know, even adults say dumb things sometimes. I think as adults, though, when we're in the presence of a child acting like that, we have an obligation to teach them better, to teach them what's right and wrong, to open their minds a little bit. And seeing how Grandpa didn't even step in the moment told me a lot that day, you know, and that was not an isolated incident. And it told that kid that you could be kind of rude to adults and not have to apologize or not really have any repercussions, And I don't know. I don't know. I hope the boy has learned. But back then, I will say, I was more affected by things. I wish I could sit here and say, oh, I'm the type of person that doesn't let anything faze her. Everything just rolls right off my back, or that I'm completely unshakable. But that's not me. I am affected by life. And although I've gotten better in that department, I definitely don't have emotions of steel. I feel. And it's a blessing and a curse. And if you're a more sensitive type, even if you're not, I think depending on the context, this question, where are you from, or people othering you, it can hurt sometimes. And I want to bring up another important point. Am I saying that an innocent and well-meaning, where are you from, is hurtful or inherently wrong? No, not necessarily. But depending on the person and the overall context of where the person is mentally at the moment and the context of the situation, it can come across as unintentionally invasive, and you might not even be aware of it. Or in my case, it just made me sad on my worst days to be constantly reminded that I was different because it triggered my sense of belonging. I just think it's mindful as we go through the world and interact with people to be mindful of that consequence. Now, should we just get over it and not have any feelings? No. That's not the right response. Our feelings are real. And I certainly think it's worth exploring why we feel this way. As I told you, for me, I wasn't in a great headspace. I was insecure about my accent, the language, everything. I didn't feel like I had a handle on anything yet. So there are reasons. But inevitably, whenever this topic comes up, people will respond defensively by saying, no, but I mean well, but I'm just curious. I'm just being friendly. I just want to connect. And I repeat, I do think that's valid and that's true the majority of the time. But remember what I said about impact versus intent. Just because you think an innocent question is okay and you're curious doesn't mean it lands the same way. And it doesn't mean the person you're talking to even wants to engage. You intend to have a friendly conversation, but maybe the impact on me is that it brings up negative feelings. And does our curiosity to know the answers, does that trump the other person's right to privacy? I don't know. Again, it's not that the question is inherently wrong or inappropriate. That's not what I'm saying. But again, I think it's important to be mindful of how a question can be received. Maybe there's a better way, a way that feels more okay to make small talk or approach a stranger instead of that, where are you from? And as I always say, there is so much nuance here. There's tone, there's context. And approaching a stranger in line at the supermarket, someone you're never going to see again, after hearing them speak with the pointed, where are you from, is very different, when that comes out of nowhere, than someone saying, oh, hi, excuse me, where are you from, to a new neighbor when you're making small talk, when you're both foreigners and new to an area, someone who you're going to see regularly. For me, I feel like the neighborly interaction or something a little more gentle, obviously comes across a bit better. And I have a whole video on small talk with the French and some nuances there. So watch this. And above all, like the way I operate, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Most people, they're totally nice. They have good intentions. They want to connect. I can't repeat that enough, but that does not negate the fact that there are rude people who don't have the best intentions in mind. And they definitely exist too. I just want to validate that for anyone out there who's being told they're making a big deal out of nothing, or they're being too sensitive or too dramatic. Like, if you've been to France and you've never come across a rude person, you haven't been here long enough, because they exist, because rude people exist everywhere. It's human. And we've all probably been rude at times, some of us more than others, but we've all been rude as well, depending on the day and the situation. So it exists. French people are not always friendly, perfect people, because they're human beings, just like you and me. And I've been asked this question with a rude tone, by rude, hateful people as well. It's definitely a thing in France, people who don't really care for Americans or foreigners in general. And I know some of you have too. Not everyone is friendly and kind. Having a bad experience doesn't mean I did anything to deserve it. It doesn't mean, we misread the situation or we didn't understand the language. Like, oh, no, they were just trying to be nice. That's a pretty insulting thing to say to someone after they tell you, I experienced situation A, and your response is, you didn't really experience situation A. You just didn't understand French well enough to know they were being friendly and curious. That is called gaslighting, my friends. That's not the direction we want to go in with anyone. So if you're new abroad, you don't have a handle on the language yet, just know your feelings are valid. If you can relate, I just want to tell you, what it comes down to is the very real experience of how something can feel on the receiving end, and whether or not someone's intentions are good. And all of this doesn't mean you shouldn't be here. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have come or that you should go home. It's all part of working through it and building confidence in this new life experience, not to mention all the emotions that come with it, and then learning how to move on and to know when something isn't even worth your energy. But I think after a while, what it comes down to, at least for me, and yes, there's more of a happy ending here, there's this positive shift after whatever it is, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever. Hopefully sooner rather than later. And this positive shift kind of comes about while you're working through it and you're living your life and you get to a point where you own it. You're like, yeah, I'm a foreigner. I'm different. I speak with an accent. We are who we are. I am who I am. And I'm doing just fine. And I hope you are too. These days, I don't ask random people where they're from. There are better questions to ask. But when the question's directed my way, I answer with a confident smile. I tell them I'm from the US. We have a chat. I know who I am. I know I'll always be different. And that is most certainly a good thing. So with that, I want to thank you for watching, everyone. I want to hear your thoughts below. I know this topic can be very nuanced. It can be very triggering. Just a reminder to please keep it respectful toward me and everyone else you encounter in the comments. I know I don't even have to say that. You guys are a good group. But yeah, just remember there's a person on the other end of the screen. Okay? And I'll see you right back here on We in France soon. Salut!